Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. This is Eight Sided Freaks. Today we have myself and Anthony breaking down UFC 314. It was a great fight card, so we have quite a bit to talk about. Good fights all throughout the event. So it's one of the more exciting pay-per-views we've had so far this year, and it's going to be a fun one to break down. Now, we're going to do it normal. Anyone who's watched a recap with us before, we'll start at the main event, work our way through the main card, then we'll hit some final thoughts at the end of the card. So that is the plan for today. And like I said, we'll start off right at the main card. Anthony, Alexander Volkanovski goes out there, gets the 145-pound belt back, won a decision over Diego Lopes. What did you make of Volkanovski's performance?
I thought he looked fantastic. Lopez was underdogged, rightfully so. I called my shot. I was really hoping because I'm a big Lopez fan, so I was hoping he would get the job done. But all the concerns and everything leading up to, one of the reasons why maybe Lopez could pull off that upset against Volk. Volk came back and completely shut that down and showed you why he is one of the best ever to ever do it. So I thought he looked amazing. I thought it was a super fun fight too, which we hadn't really been getting. I feel like specifically with these main events, belt fights, and a lot of these pay-per-views, whether that be what was that Islam kind of ragdolling Moicano, the Pereira Uncle Ive one, not really living up to it. So just set aside alone the clinic and how amazing Volk won and everything that went on with him getting his belt back and everything. Just the fight itself too, I thought was still thoroughly entertaining, and I was happy with it.
Yeah, and I think from the fight perspective, I mean, it Volkanovski was really willing to sit down and trade, and I was kind of surprised me because there were obviously times where he was on his bike, but there were also times where he planted his feet and they were going to trade 3-4 shots from the pocket. I shouldn't say trade because they weren't all connecting, but he was giving Lopez the opportunity in exchanges to land something. I'll say that. And he was landing big shots of his own. So for a guy who was coming off 2 consecutive knockout losses in the early rounds, for him to be willing to go out there, sit down in the pocket, and I'd probably say he was more willing to sit down and trade in the pocket than he was in a lot of previous fights, especially the Topuria fight, the 3 Max fights. I think he was more willing to plant his feet and really rip some shots in the pocket, and he was landing. It was impressive in my opinion, and the jab still looked great as well. I was surprised he didn't kick the legs more, but it worked out fine for him. But I thought that was going to be something that, he's great at that. He's won fights with that. And so I'm surprised he didn't use that. And I think a lot of people are saying, oh, it's the same old Volk, that we had before. And I don't necessarily think that's true. I think he changed some things up, like the willingness to sit in the pocket and a little bit less on the leg kicks. And, you can still see a little bit of him being older. But he is so technically great that he's going to be better when he's older in comparison to a lot of guys who would have fallen off. He hasn't fallen off because of how technically smart he is. So I thought he looked great from that perspective.
Yeah, it's a little counterintuitive or hypocritical, but I guess first we'll start. I thought he was eating up Lopez's legs early in that first round, and then it felt like he didn't really go back to it till it was the end of the third or the fourth maybe, and then he landed a couple again. But yeah, it definitely at first he was getting to the leg, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be one of those. And then yeah, he weirdly kind of went away from it. And the other thing I was gonna say was I had Lopez winning and everything, and I thought Lopez's best chance were to create those exchanges. And but in saying that, even in the first 2 rounds, when they did have those exchanges, I thought Volk was winning them. When there'd be the 3 or 4 punch combos where they're both trading, but even though Volk was winning them, I just think obviously Lopez dropped him in the second too. So when it gets to the 4th or 5th, I thought Lopez is eating a lot of Volk shots. Also, shout out, we didn't really have to get to see it, but obviously Lopez has a chin on him.
Yeah.
I don't think people didn't think he didn't. We just hadn't seen it quite yet. So yeah, he has a chin on him. But even though Volk was winning more of those exchanges, I thought that was probably Lopes's avenue to victory in that fourth or fifth round. Is you've already eaten all of Volk's best shots. I don't think he's probably not going to hit you with anything necessarily that's going to put you out. So I thought he should have just kept pressuring, and then you see he hit him clean one time, and Volk dropped. And I didn't even think it was like the crispest punch of all. People were saying like, "Oh, Volk can eat Lopes's best shot." I didn't necessarily think that was Lopes's best shot. I think he just finally caught him clean once. But then at a certain point, I think it was the fourth round, and my friend finally said too, and I was like, well, that's probably true. I was like, oh, see, Lopes just has to keep getting into these exchanges, and if you clip him, and he keeps getting close, he keeps missing by an inch, and then he was like, or maybe at a certain point, Volk is that good that he consistently makes these top fighters miss by an inch in all these exchanges. And so I was like, well, when you put it that way too, I can only ask Lopes to try to put him in the best chances where I think a finish could be possible, but you're only ever going to get that finish if Volk, allows himself to slip up or gets a little too maybe confident and gets hit. But he's Volk, by the way, figured some of those or brushed aside some of those chin concerns and stuff and ate some good shots of his own. But yeah, he consistently is proven, besides obviously the one head kick, and I'm sure Max hit him a couple times too. Topuria is a different beast entirely, we've seen with what he's done. But I mean, Volk himself is, for the most part, unhittable when he gets in there, and then when he got cracked a couple times, he was able to eat it and keep going.
Yeah, and on the Lopes side of things, I agree with what you said, that he really needed those exchanges. I think round 4 is when he got really aggressive and really hunting, and he was missing a lot in those exchanges, and Volkanovski landed some counters in those moments too. My read on this, and I might be wrong, but the vibe that I got on this was Diego was trying to pace himself to go 5 rounds, I felt like. And then come rounds 4 and rounds 5, he didn't really have enough in the tank to really go, he wasn't like cardio gassing out, like about ready to get stopped, but he didn't have everything he needed to get a finish in those late rounds, in my opinion. And it feels like I feel like he would have been been more likely to win this fight if he was really aggressive in 1 and 2, but that would have then opened up the chances of him getting finished in 3, 4, 5. And, I understand why he didn't want to run that risk, but I feel like if he would have really just spent all his energy earlier, there's a better chance that he maybe gets that stoppage. Because I kind of felt like he had so much effort he could give, and I feel like he was willing to expand that over 25 rather than condense it in 15. Because we've seen him in 15-minute fights where he has a certain amount of output that he can give, and he'll burn it in the first 2 rounds, or maybe he even gets into the 3rd round a little bit, but he burns that energy, and it does him well. He'll either get the finish or he'll win 2 rounds like he did against Dan Ige. But, it's hard to criticize him when you're in there against a guy who, in my opinion, Volk's cardio is like, might have the most underrated cardio of all time. Like, he went 5 rounds with Max 3 times, and he won championship rounds in those matchups. And Max is often a guy regarded as having great cardio. So, and he paces guys too. Like the stuff he was doing in the first round where he's landing the takedown, getting the ground and pound, that is so tiring. So there is an aspect of that as well where it's hard to, set yourself up for success in the later rounds against Volkanovski, where if he were in there with a guy who didn't have as good a cardio in Volkanovski, maybe those exchanges in 4 and 5 are a little bit closer for him, and it's not as big of an issue. He just happened to be in there with the one guy who, at this point in this division, you're really going to struggle in those 4th and 5th rounds. And not only does he have cardio, but he's elite at making reads as well. So he has both things going for him to win those championship rounds.
It seemed like the game plan or the business decision he took, instead of I think by most people would agree that that one of those first 2 round finishes was probably his best avenue of victory. So instead of putting all those eggs in that basket and maybe just going balls to the wall for those 2 rounds, and then probably if you don't get it, you're definitely going to be compromised 3, 4, and 5. He went for the well, maybe I'll try to make all 5 competitive, but not being the scariest round 1 or round 2. But at least I know I'll still be there and have a chance 3, 4, and 5. But obviously, like you said too, even though I would say he was competitive overall 5, he didn't do
Hmm.
overtly 1, 2. It's not being, say he could be 30% in 3, 4, and 5. If he's gassed out, he went all for 1, 2. It's going to be incredibly hard to beat Volk. Well, even if you try to go more competitive and maybe he's around 70% 4 and 5, that's still going to be incredibly hard to beat someone like Volk. So I didn't hate the game plan. Um, and I think, I mean, they both look good. I thought they both, fought good too. It's just, um, if you, I think a lot of the concerns too that were helping Lopes get some advantages was like, oh, Volk's old, the age, maybe the chin, the durability, and when he turns in a performance like that, I'd say you put this fight 3 years ago, and people would have took Volk a lot more. It's just kind of Lopes got some advantages of people maybe thinking Volk couldn't be what he was, but he turned around and put in an all-time performance again to get the belt back.
Yeah, and I do want to really add to that point as well, because like you said, it's an all-time performance. He's literally the only guy under the age of, excuse me, the only guy over the age of 35 to win the belt at 155 or lower. Um, there's been that 35 and over stat. Some people call it the curse. I don't know why it's a curse exactly. I think it's just a stat of how fighters at those ages perform. Um, the original that people were going with was the 170 mark, and that's kind of been disproven a couple times. T Wood got one done. Bilal is 35, so it's been a little bit easier at 70. But below 155 pounds, it's been very hard at the championship level. Um, I will shout out Demetrius Johnson as well, because when he was over in one competing with Reyes over there, he was over 35. And I know he wanted credit for that, and I think he deserves it for being 125 pounds at that age. But point being, he's literally the first guy to do it in the UFC, Volkanovski. So he deserves a lot of credit for that alone, because the stats say once you hit that age, getting it done in those weight classes is simply a very, very, very hard task. So he deserves a lot of credit for not only winning at this age, but the comeback he's had and the adversity he's gone through. Really impressive for him to come back and get in the win column in a championship fight. So he deserves the utmost respect for that.
And then one of the last things before we maybe start picking fights was going to
Hmm.
be, this was probably a more minority opinion, but I just would say to people, because I saw a couple people, but I knew it was probably more trolling and hating, like, oh, see Lopes, one of the weakest contenders, to which I just thought was a bit much. I think, if anything, that fight showed you he deserved that. And I think with that performance, you should probably only be more faithful or hopeful in the future that he can maybe become champion. Obviously, depends on matchups and stuff. But I still thought that was a overall good account for Lopes in the challenger spot.
I agree. I picked Volkanovski, and I kind of thought it was going to be a little bit more one sided, especially in the championship rounds. Um, and for Lopes, I feel like he has a couple things he can do. He First of all, he's only 30, so like he's still got years left, and he hasn't been run through the mud in terms of
Hmm.
damage. So there's things that he can do to, take a leap forward. And simply said, this division is going to eventually go through some movement and some things going on, because we've got new fighters in the division. We've got Holloway and Taporia leaving the division. Volkanovski is still 35, and like, yes, his last performance was great, but like, we'll just, for conversation's sakes, we'll say Lopes has until he's 35. You know, at some point, that's 5 years. At some point, Volkanovski isn't going to hang on to the belt for 5 years. So, um, there's going to be opportunity for him, and it feels like he's also going to be a guy that the UFC gets behind, and he's going to get good fights. I don't think he's going to be a guy who we're hitting with every bad stylistic matchup that we can come up with. So I think he'll have opportunities. Plus, he has like a skill set that with a couple of tweaks, you can really make some big improvements.
I will say too, I thought the other thing with the height disadvantage, although Volk's dealt with that his whole career and stuff, I thought Lopes was going to be able to do a little bit more with the jab, but I know Volk has the freakishly long arms, and even though he's been shorter, like I said, he's used to fighting people taller than him. I thought it was Volk's jab that was actually the more impressive thing, and I thought it actually kind of frustrated. Lopes looked a little frustrated around 4 and 5. Partly that could have been due to, like you said, the cardio. Him going rounds 4 and 5 against someone with elite cardio. I just think he probably hadn't been in that arena yet in a UFC fight specifically. But I thought he even got a little frustrated with how well Volk was utilizing the jab, especially rounds 4 and 5. I can't remember if it was end of round 4, beginning of round 5. He gave a couple of mannerisms where he looked frustrated in there.
Yeah, he did the thing where he yelled at some point in there. I agree. I think the jab had him a little frustrated. I think the cardio probably had him a little frustrated, and I think the footwork probably had him a little frustrated. Because especially in those late rounds, Volk was doing a good job of moving on the outside. Lopes couldn't really cut off the cage and catch him, and he had a hard time corralling him, I felt like, in those championship rounds. And that probably, when you're getting hit with the jab and you can't really corral the guy to swing back, like that's a frustrating type of fight to deal with. So, one other thing that did surprise me from Lopes, I'm surprised he didn't throw. I feel like he didn't throw very many kicks, but specifically head kicks.
That's what I was gonna say too.
Because Volkanovski's head kick defense is like, yes, he got knocked out by Islam with the head kick, but also like, for people who don't know, I used to do the film studies on Vendetta, breaking down film, showing clips, and before he got knocked out by Islam, I put his head kick defense as like a very serious concern. So it's not just the Islam fight where that pops up. It's the Max fight. I think Max dropped him with the head kick in the second fight, and he just kind of puts, he'll block it with like one hand, and it's just not really enough involved there blocking the head kicks. And he is like shorter, and his reach makes up for a lot of the length problems. But like, there is no, when you're short, you don't have to kick as high to kick someone in the head. Like, your arms can be as long as they want to make up for everything else, but that's when you just can't make up with guys being able to put some head kicks on you. And that could have helped with the movement too, because maybe you can try and catch him moving into some head kicks, and maybe that can try and force his movement to one side. And so I think that is probably something else I would have wanted to see from Lopes.
And yeah, then that's something that was the last thing I was gonna say too was I think when you are down 3-1 and like then it's round 4 and 5 and you're Leon Edwards, like it's sure it could be seen as like a Hail Mary. Like it's easy to say, oh well, he should just throw a head kick to see if he can knock him out. Like obviously I get there's and more intrinsic things that lead to that, but especially I think he would back him up a little bit. Volk would be closer to the cage, and then he would keep circling out to the right. And I was like, well, just throw that head kick. And he threw one in the fourth, and Volk blocked it. Fair enough. But I just think, I mean, when you're down, it's the same thing. When you're down 3-1 and, I'd be like, I think he should have pressured more and started those more chaotic exchanges. Well, same thing, like for the possibility to lead to a knockout. I think he should just have thrown that head kick a couple more times, especially just to see maybe if one lands. And like you said, if Volk's head kick defense is already maybe one of his weaker spots, you just never know. I just think when you're down 3-1 and you're kind of chasing for a knockout, you have to put yourself in a position to throw those certain shots where you might be able to get lucky and compromise them.
Mm-hmm. And if you're gonna catch him at a moment, it's something he didn't throw a lot of. So it's not like it's something that like, oh, this specific, I got to watch out for the head kick because he's been trying to hit me with it for four rounds. Like he was chasing with the hands for a large portion of that fight. So that's probably what Volk in his head was thinking the most about was the hands. So maybe it's kind of like a change up. Maybe you could get him not thinking about it, and then maybe you don't even get the finish. Maybe you make one of his cuts a little bit worse, and maybe that can spiral into a little bit more blood in the face, and maybe that can open up the hands. There's a lot of things that could help them with. So I agree with you though. All right. Let's go over to some matchmaking, and we'll start with Volkanovski is there anyone that jumps out to you for the next 145-pound title fight against Volkanovski?
I'm loading up the rankings. I thought it probably the first name was Mofsar, right? Because he was technically in the running for this title shot. And obviously he hasn't lost since, he hasn't fought since. But so I thought Mofsar for sure was there. I know we'll talk about it, but it kind of seemed after this fight like 8 different people thinks they deserve the next title shot. So there's that. But I think there's definitely a few people to pick from. I just probably think needs to be some title eliminators happening, which would make this even more clear. But I mean, the front runner right now, I would say it was Mofsar, just because he was in the contention for getting this one, and he just didn't get the nod Lopes did. So
Yeah, and I think for Mosvar, he got jumped by a guy he beat, and I'm not really even that mad at the UFC for jumping him. Based on the anticipation for this one, seemed like their decision to pick Lopes really paid off, and the fight itself paid off as well. So I think this is an opportunity or this is a situation where he got jumped. When you're looking at just who deserves it, nothing else, he was probably the guy who deserves it the most. And he also, he's not going to be a guy who sells a ton of pay-per-views, but I think people seeing Volk get back in the win column, I think people are going to be tuning in for Volkanovski fights regardless. And I don't think that him fighting a guy like Mosvar is going to be a bad pay-per-view. I feel like that's going to sell enough just for where Volkanovski's at in his career, and people are really appreciating him for that performance. And I feel like beating Mosvar, taking that 0 off his record, I think for Volkanovski is a good opportunity for his legacy. It's already pretty cemented, but like when you're talking about adding to it, taking the undefeated guy who, he hasn't really defeated a dominant wrestler in his title reign. He's got the good grapplers on there against Ortega, and in the first Islam fight, his defensive grappling looks pretty good despite losing that fight. So I think that would be a good one for his legacy to take out the undefeated young guy. Lopes was undefeated as well, or no, he wasn't. He was not undefeated.
Because besides the first fight, but yeah.
But taking out another guy who's never lost in his career, I think is a pretty good opportunity for him. So I would say Movsar Aloyev. And then after that, like you said, there's a billion guys in this division that need to fight. I do not think there's a single fighter in the rankings that is currently booked. That is Giga Chikadze is booked at 12, but that doesn't really count because when we're talking about title talks, sorry,
he's not
Giga.
in it. Yeah.
And that is partially because we had 2 guys fight this week. Excuse me, we had 2 guys fighting the title fight this week. Then we had 4 other featherweights on the card. The last card was Josh Emmett versus Lerone Murphy. So they all just fought is why they're unbooked. It's not like they're all sitting on the sidelines.
Mm-hmm.
So they also just signed Aaron Pico as well, so he needs to get in there. So, but lots of matchmaking to take place moving forward. And then on the other side of things, Diego Lopes. I don't know about you, and this will spoil us for a little bit later, but I'm pretty cool with the Yair Rodriguez fight.
Okay.
Like they had the beef at the press conference, and Yair's a guy who's talking about title fights, and like I've got nothing against you, Yair, but you just broke a 2-fight losing streak. We're gonna need more wins than one against a guy who made his UFC debut. We're just gonna need more than that to get to the title, in my opinion. And I think Diego Lopes is at this point the next best thing aside from a title. So
I would agree with that too. I know there was Yair, Silva and stuff, but I thought they kind of set it up perfectly with the stuff that happened at the press conference and stuff. So I think everyone, we'll get to too. I thought Yair looked awesome too, give or take. He was fighting like a 37-year-old and stuff, but I don't know how you could watch both of those fights, the Lopes and the Yair, and not have that, like, especially with the beef that kind of happened too, and not be excited for that fight as well. So I think that's a good pick too. If you're on board with giving Mofsar the next shot, and then that could be a title eliminator. Also, you'd still have to do with something with Murphy and Silva, but they are still, on the younger side, just climbing. And so Yair's been around here for a while. So I think if you make them or not Lopes, sorry, if you make Silva and Murphy, get more wins under the belt, that I'd be fine with that, and make that Yair Lopes one a title eliminator. I'd be on board with.
Yep. And then another quick complaint from me before we move on. Can we please get Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria out of the rankings?
Yeah.
I love both of those guys, but we have Max Holloway slotted here at number 1, who has said, I'm now a lightweight. He has said. Ilia Topuria is number 3. That's just outrageous in itself. I imagine that happened because some people didn't rank him, while others probably ranked him number 1. That's probably how that happened, that he ended up at number 3. But he vacated the belt to move up a division. Just get them both out of the rankings. And I don't understand why this didn't happen before Saturday, because then it's number 1 versus number 2 fighting for the vacant belt. Instead of, I think it was,
which looks better too.
Yeah. And that's where they would where they would legitimately be ranked, considering they're counting 2 guys not in the division. And then when you're looking at this, it's well, now we're talking between number 4, Movsar Evloev, number 5, Yair, talking about number 8, Lerone Murphy, when in reality, Lerone Murphy's really number 6. Yair would really be number 2. Well, Movsar and Yair are tied at 4, but he would still move up. Same with all these guys. It makes it a lot easier just to matchmake and look at when you take the 2 guys not in the division out of the division.
Yeah, I don't know that they need to fight first and then they'll finally take them out of or just do it now. I agree.
Yeah, it's pointless. All right, moving up a weight class and down the card to the co-main event, we had Michael Chandler versus Paddy Pimblett. Paddy went out there, got himself a round 3 TKO ground and pound stoppage. What did you make of Paddy Pimblett's performance?
I thought it was good. I think that was back-to-back, good performances, give or take. The first one was against Bobby Green. So, you didn't want to put a lot of stake into that. And this one is against Michael Chandler, which maybe you shouldn't put a lot of stake into. But that's why I was picking Paddy. I think I don't have a lot of faith or am a big fan of Chandler. And I think when you're a good fighter, not only is he getting older, all that stuff, but when you're a good fighter, but some of the things that make you good, you don't really utilize, and you fight low IQ in every fight, and you continually lose in every fight, I don't think, I'm just going to be lower on you than it felt like some other people were. And Paddy, I think I was trying to also think he had a lot of hype around him for a reason. Now, he himself, I would have liked to see better performances in certain fights, but I think I was still taking the upside with him compared to, I don't know if there's upside with Chandler anymore at this point. So I thought when they got in there, Paddy looked really good, started kicking again, which I think he started kicking a little bit more in that Bobby Green fight as well, which was nice. Obviously has a good chin, everything. Still good on the ground, quick to jump on a back, everything. Did it through TKO, but I would say the other thing too is we joke about Chandler after round 1. I think he might have actually gassed in the first 2. At this point, I don't even know if round 1 Chandler's a thing anymore. It might be 2 minutes and 30 seconds Chandler, because I genuinely thought he almost gassed in the first round, and then, like we've said too, he always likes to make it entertaining at the expense of maybe fighting the right way. And instead of just going for a traditional takedown, he wants to go for the suplex and everything 7 times in a row, which I thought was an interesting decision. But I thought overall it was fun to see someone that had hype and lost it. People are, I think, slowly coming back around to him, and I think he's now putting on some of the performances that we were expecting.
Yeah, this is a weird one for me, because every time I talk about Paddy, I feel like I'm being the biggest hater of all time, and I'm not really attempting to do that. That's just kind of the way my thoughts have been. And when I was watching this fight, I feel like the 2 ways you can look at this, well, it doesn't have to be the 2 ways, but I feel like the most common way people are looking at this is wow, Paddy Pimblett looked good. I feel like a lot of people are really high on his performance, and I'm not mad at that because he did everything that he needed to do to get the win and get the stoppage. So I'm not angry that people are like, wow, he looked good. Because he went out there and got the win over the guy he was put in there with. But at the same time, I feel like that is the worst Michael Chandler has ever looked by a really, really wide margin. Um, and his game, this is a problem that I have with certain fighters who are aging, is when your game is based on athleticism and speed and to an extent strength, but all of these things that are based solely off athleticism. Um, like Michael Chandler is the polar opposite of Alexander Volkanovski. When we're talking about Volkanovski's going out there and still winning because of how smart he is, Michael Chandler's never been that smart, and he's winning with his physicality, speed, things like that. And it's all gone, it looks like to me. Like I thought he looked dirt slow out there. And when he's slow, he's never gonna land those big overhands because he doesn't go out there and pump a jab and set it up or do anything like that. He's trying to close the distance and land the big shot. And when he had the speed to do that, it worked. And he landed big shots. And he overperformed against guys like Poirier because of athletic attributes. Now he's in there with a guy who's way worse than like your Poirier and your Gaethje. Mind you, that was also those guys 3 or 4 years ago. But now he's in there with a guy who doesn't have half the striking skills as them, half the range management of them, half the striking danger of them, and he cannot get inside and land a shot. And then, like you said, he's out there trying to grapple. He gets tired every time he grapples. I mean, he got submitted by Poirier, and Poirier is not a bad grappler, but like he got submitted because he was tired because they were grappling, and that makes him tired every time he grapples. So it was a baffling performance from strategy wise, and it looked bad from just his own speed. Like when Paddy landed that knee, Chandler's like ducking into that thing at the slow speed you've ever seen. You could see him changing levels from a mile away. So once again, I feel like I'm raining on the Paddy Pimblett parade, but I do really think Chandler looked pretty bad in there, and I don't know who Chandler beats at this point. Like,
Hmm.
there's a lot of guys that would really like. What happens if he's in there with Ignacio Bahamondes, for example? The 15th ranked guy. Like, he probably gets picked apart pretty cleanly on the feet, and then he's going to gas out in 2.5 minutes and be done. Like, I just think his overall ceiling. Now I feel like he fell off the cliff. A year ago he hadn't fallen off the cliff yet, but it looks to me like he fell off the cliff.
Well, that's what happens when you waste, 2 a year already. Maybe not even prime years because you're already older, but 2 years, 2.5 years waiting for that McGregor fight too, which kind of was, I mean, out of his control too. I mean, maybe he could have, let the rope slip and switched his path a little earlier, but that did kind of screw him over with the McGregor thing. But yeah, I was happy with this Paddy performance because I do genuinely still think he's a good fighter and everything. But I think a lot of this was in more of an indictment of where Chandler's at. I think when this fight was announced, we said, "Oh wow, they just gave Paddy a big step up," but they gave him a guy that he actually could beat. Like, there's some other people maybe that I don't think. Like you pick Oliveira. I don't know the exact. Maybe even Gaethje. You pick some of those people. I don't think Paddy was rolling in there minus 170 right before the fight started. So I don't know. It's just one of those things. I think if it came from Covington too, but I saw the stat that I think Paddy's last three wins, their fighters are like 0-13 or something in their last however many fights, which or that's their combined record in their last like we'll say four fights or something. So
Mhm.
I mean that's not a good sign either. But like you said, and like we've said on this, at least Paddy went in there and did what he was supposed to do. So you do have to commend him for that. But for people, if they are over exaggerating this win, um, I don't know if I would take a Chandler performance who's now 0-4 on a 0-4 streak or something as like, oh wait, no, Paddy's championship contending fighter right now. I think that's a bit much.
Yeah, the one thing I will say about Paddy is I think there's a serious chance that they just roll him into fights with guys who are at that age. Like, what's stopping the UFC from only booking him against these lightweights that are 35 and older who have been through every war imaginable and just hoping they like all these guys are live to fall off a cliff at any moment. Dan Hooker's career was almost over once, and we're on the resurgence. Like it's not far fetched that it could go downhill really quickly again. Gaethje is 36 and has never had good jiu-jitsu in his life. Doesn't mean he can doesn't mean Paddy can take Gaethje down. Oliveira's 35, and we've seen how many times he's been hit in the octagon. Like he gets hit, and he gets rocked, and a lot of these guys. I won't say Poirier because Poirier is gonna retire after his next one, and sounds like that's gonna be booked any time now. So I'm pretty sure that won't be Paddy, but I feel like they might just Beneil Dariush, another one. Like Beneil can grapple his ass off, but he's 35 and has no chin. Like there's a lot of routes here where the UFC could really matchmake for Paddy and give him guys who may fall right off that cliff as well. So I do think that's a real possibility moving forward for him. And one thing that I do want to say is I do think he'll get rushed to a title pretty soon because like Ilya was on Joe Rogan and he said, he wants to fight Islam, he wants to beat Islam, and he wants his first defense to be Paddy. So like Paddy gets one more good win and Ilya goes out there and beats Islam, or excuse me. Yeah, Paddy gets one win, Ilya beats Islam, and the next thing you know, there's a title fight right there. So I don't think we're far from Paddy Pimblett fighting in title fights.
I've always thought too. You look at, especially at like lightweight or some of these lower weight classes. I've always thought people forget. Like you see these champions in like Khabib defended against Poirier, Gaethje, and got Oliveira, and stuff like that. But what makes these divisions so tough, it's not that necessarily even the champions themselves are very decorated and they keep defending these belts. No, what makes it hard is having to win the 3 fights against the straight killers to get to that title shot. That's what I think taxes a lot of people, or that's why these certain people's resumes look so good. So if he's already so he's ranked 8 right now. If like you said, they give him another one of the older guys that's about to be done, he wins that fight, and then he gets that title shot without the tax of having to go through all the killers in the division. And then Paddy's a good enough fighter to on one night of fighting, sure, he can get his hand raised. Maybe he gets the upset against the title fight, but he's skipping all the extracurriculars of the grind that it takes to reach the title shot at these stacked weight classes. He's kind of coming in at the right time right now, where just the old guys are phasing out, and then I think the UFC's kind of not done the best job at getting some of the newer blood into the rankings, like they should be. Like it's Alvarez. I mean, the BSD too, but it's like, yeah, Alvarez is someone we've been like excited for and hyped on, and he just now got to 15. Like there's still, I think there's still many more names in that Alvarez vein that could at least be taking those 10 through 15 spots.
Yep. And then we're booking Benoit Saint Denis versus Joel Alvarez, and those are 2 guys that everyone is like, oh, this guy's really good. Like that's also a whole different grind that Paddy also skipped, is the grind of going through the lightweight division to even get to 15. Like he did it off Bobby.
He got lucky. Bobby
Tony
Green won a couple fights when he did, and then took
Yeah.
that ranked number next to his name, and so then he got to step in against Bobby that already got him in the rankings. Then you get I won't say layup, but then you get the easier fight with Chandler. Boom, just jumped you up in the rankings again. So it is a little luckier path or easier path than some.
And then if you were to book him next, who is the guy that you would like to see Paddy in there with?
I don't know. I mean, like we're just saying, I don't know. I assume Poirier probably wants more of a legacy fight. I don't think he would want to be the stepping stone in one of those.
I will say I think they're gonna do Poirier Holloway BMF title fight in Louisiana. I think I'd be at just based off the rumors I've seen. Like they were doing a pre-show and they had Chael, DC, and Poirier up there, And Chael starts the show by going, "So, Dustin, how's your fight gonna go in New Orleans for the meet?" Like Chael's up there talking about what the fight's gonna be, and Dustin's like, "Well, I didn't know that was happening." It's like,
Uh-huh.
okay,
So, because I do like that one. So if you take those two names out, um, I don't know if you would want to make Paddy fight like a Gamera or Dariush, who he's right surrounded next to, and I would say maybe the Gaethje fight. I know Armin kind of got, give or take, he did pull out of the fight, but Armin kind of got screwed over, and he had his title shot, and poof, it's completely gone now. So that's interesting because Dana doesn't normally do that with a lot of other fighters, but I know Paddy weirdly didn't call him out a little bit, or maybe called him out at the end. So I mean, there's that fight. I don't know. I think this whole division is a bit awkward, especially when you still have Ilya, and it's like I don't know what they want to do with Ilya yet, or like how I don't know who they want to even start setting up for the title shot is kind of the tough one.
Mhm.
So maybe I would say maybe a Gaethje, and then being, I mean, they'd be a tough fight, but being really generous is then giving Paddy Armin, who's number one though, which is another insane jump, spots wise or
Mhm.
rankings wise.
Call me crazy, but I kind of want to see the Colby Covington fight. Like,
Okay.
there's not a lot of things that interest me with Colby Covington, but like, could you imagine the build up to that one?
Hmm.
Like, that would probably be the most fun you could have with the Colby Covington build up at this point in his career.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think he's beating any welterweights, Colby. Well, I shouldn't say any, but broadly speaking, I could care less about Colby. But like, we've got this whole mess at lightweight. We can book all these guys up, figure some things out, get a title fight in line, have Paddy go. Like, if they want to make Paddy a star, like Colby Covington's aging pretty bad. Like, everyone hates Colby Covington. You go out there and beat Colby Covington, and that fight's gonna end up being a hot one in terms of the build-up. And I'm sure you book that as a co-main to a pay-per-view. People are gonna be rooting for Paddy. Like, that one may just be one that can really help him in terms of pure star power. And I think the risk reward isn't that high of a risk, and I think the reward is pretty good. And then you can kind of book everyone else up. And if they want them to get the jump on one of these guys while they're older, well, that just kicked the ball down the road 8 months, 9 months. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're going from 35 to 36 or 36 to now 37, may be a smart play by the UFC.
Yeah, I think too, especially Colby, since he can't sell his fights in the octagon now, of course, just hops on and tries to
Mhm.
start something with Paddy afterwards. I'm like, oh my God. But I do think that would work too, depending on where Ilya is at this. And if, say, Ilya can get the title shot or win, and then after that Paddy Colby fight, now I'm sure Paddy and Ilya could be the next one. And like you said, if Paddy with another win, another good performance, I think should skyrocket again popularity wise. Like I said, the bar I was watching it at, they were more excited for that Paddy fight than that Volk Lopes fight, which was astonishing to me. But I think, yeah, I mean, it's there to, at a certain point, I don't know how far down the road, but an Ilya Paddy fight would, I imagine, would do numbers. So that would, I mean, that is something.
Yeah. I'm also interested to see, this is slightly off topic, but um the exclusive negotiation window with ESPN is closed. They might not even have pay-per-view anymore. Like, I don't know what, like, there's a lot of unknowns here. And like, building up a guy like Paddy at this point, like, they're probably selling an Ilya and Paddy fight to whoever they want to be their new broadcast partner. Like, listen, we got this lined up. Like, we're gonna have big fights in the future. Like, and I think Paddy's a guy that they're looking at kind of and have circled as far as, when you're pitching yourself and your company to an ESPN and Amazon and Netflix, whoever, they can circle his name and go, that's numbers right there.
Hmm.
So um I think that tells you all you need to know about how they're going to treat him moving forward. And I, like you said, I think that Ilya and Paddy fight would have people riled up and watching the sport. I will say that. All right, moving down the card, Yair Rodriguez versus Patricio Pitbull. This was Pitbull's UFC debut. Did not go his way. He lost a decision. He was nearly finished in round 3 by Yair. Yair looked pretty solid for all 3 rounds. Went out there, got his hand raised. What'd you make of the fight?
Yeah, I think that was another one. I mean, there's a bit of unknown, like, oh, how is he going to look when he comes over, like, because he wasn't in the UFC and stuff. But I think it looked like Yair kind of beat up on a past his prime 37-year-old a little bit. So some of the things that he's always been good at, he was able to obviously use in this one and look good in those same ways. A lot of kicks, a lot of speed. Um, was putting some pretty nice, pretty entertaining combinations, and I think it was a little good bounce back too after seeing Yair lose 2 in a row. To we're like, okay, yeah, I forgot that's why this dude was a little special or known as entertaining. It's just the way his striking flows. So I think it was a pretty good one. Also, a little bit of a scare there when he subbed. I can't remember if his arm got
Yeah,
caught.
I think it was an armbar.
I was praying for him to just back up, or get up from the ground and pound position, but then got out of it and everything. So it was overall good enough fight. I didn't think wasn't fight of the night or anything, but overall good enough fight. And then yeah, Yair did what he needed to do, and he looked pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am kind of disappointed in the form we saw from Pitbull. Um, I just think that right now this division is under so much change. We've talked about it already, but Volk back at the top, guys moving weight classes, they're signing free agents. Like a lot is going on at 145. You've got guys like Murphy climbing the rankings, Gene Silva climbing the rankings, some guys falling down the rankings. Like there's just a lot of movement. And I think it's even more interesting if you got a guy like Pitbull who comes in and like looks good. Like, so I think there was a big opportunity for him. And I just didn't see a guy who, for years has been talking about, oh, I beat Volkanovski. Oh, I'd beat Holloway. I didn't see that. And I think that was always overstated. I don't think he was ever the best featherweight in the world. Um, And if there was ever a time where he could get a jump on it and actually get it, like, yes, he's older, but the division is now in the spot where you could really steal the belt for a second. Um, I didn't see that at all. I didn't see the potential of that. Not saying he'll never win a UFC fight. I will say the featherweight division is pretty tough, and he didn't look outstanding. So I'm kind of disappointed with the performance from Pitbull. But at the same time, this is another one we've talked about a little bit already. Like, Yair went out there and did everything he needed to do. And part of the reason he didn't look good is because of how much of a unique fighter Yair is and how fast he is. So I feel like those two things really caused Pitbull a lot of problems, to put on top of the fact that he probably wasn't in career best form and he's going on the decline a little bit. So I think those two things work together to create a pretty solid outing for Yair.
Yeah, I was trying to tell my friends, like, no, don't worry, this dude was like pretty good actually when he was in his prime. But I saw someone say it's gonna be another thing where Pitbull comes over, way too old. He's gonna lose like 2 or 3 fights, and then everyone's gonna be like, "Okay, this dude was bad." And it's like, no, well, he wasn't bad. He just came over when he was 37 already and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think I think there's hopefully still a couple of fights you could make. I don't know how long he wants to fight or the contract he signed, but I'm sure there's easier matchups for him too, like you were saying too. I think there's a chance that Pitbull can still have some fun fights or find some success, but like you said, the division's still pretty tough too, though. So it's not gonna be easy.
Yeah. We already talked about Yair a little bit. So do you have, I'll throw my matchup out there for Pitbull that I like. And there's a couple, but one that I really like is Dan Ige. I think that's a really fun fight. I think Dan Ige in general, fun fights. And I think that's you lost clearly, pretty cleanly, not the most competitive fight against the number 4 guy in the world. So prove to us you can fight in the rankings. We don't need to throw you in there with, Arnold Allen just to have the same thing happen to you again. We're going to give you a guy in Danny Gay who I like Danny Gay more than most, I feel like. And they use Danny Gay as a gatekeeper. And he's lost to Bryce Mitchell. He's lost to Lerone Murphy. He's lost to Musvar Evloev. He's lost to the guys they're at the top of that division. And the guys who are in the top 10. So if you're a Pitbull, Ige lost to Lopes. Like, if you're a Pitbull, Ige is a guy that you need to beat to hold your spot, but he's not a pushover. So I think that's a good test for Pitbull. Similar thought process. I wouldn't hate Calvin Kattar, who's 15th. I would. That's not a bad one either for me. Pitbull and Kattar, and I think that would also solve the problem of Ige and Kattar both fighting a lot of the guys that are ranked, so that can kind of solve like a matchmaking issue for them as well.
Yeah, I like it because I didn't know how far to go down. So I know Josh Emmett just lost and stuff, but I like the Ige pick. I think it'd be fun to see, a Kattar too, to see where he's at. And then the only other thing I thought, but give or take, would be a rematch with Chandler, especially how Chandler looked. But that you would have to worry about weights or where they would fight. I don't know. I assume Pitbull would maybe go up, but I don't know. So that was just the only other one. But I did like the Ige pull, especially after. I think getting a pretty good win over Sean Woodson too, and being like, okay, well, hold on, I'm still a ranked fighter. Like I still got some in me. So,
I do like the Josh Emmett shout as well. I didn't really think of his name, but I think that for similar reasons, like 10 through 15 in the rankings makes a lot of sense for Pitbull. So I don't hate the Emmett shout either. And then before we move down, was there anything else that you wanted to touch on for Yair before we move down to the next featherweight fight?
no, I think more than anything, I think that it was just good that he looked good, got the win, and now after coming off those two losses, I know one of them was to Volk and stuff, but he's you got to get that first win first. Then now we can start talking about those Lopes fights, maybe the Silva fight, who we were going to talk about and all that stuff. But he put his name. He's not in line for a title shot. I know Dana said something like that, but I think that fight now gets you back in title talks to where after your next one, that opportunity is definitely there.
Yeah, I agree. Too early, but you can see the light at the end of the tunnel as far as getting a title fight goes. And then the last featherweight fight on the card, Bryce Mitchell versus Gene Silva. Really clean performance from Gene Silva, in my opinion. I think in the early goings here, he did a good job with the grappling, and I feel like his striking made Bryce really uncomfortable. And then that really turned the heat on in round 2. He started to land some powerful shots, and Bryce just looked really uncomfortable on the feet. I think Bryce's takedowns were the worst I've probably ever seen from him. Personally, I don't like his takedowns. That was something I talked about, I think, before the Ige fight as well. But I think his takedowns are, if I had to rate him on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably say they're about a 5. And in this one, he looked uncomfortable because of the power and the physicality, and his takedowns got sloppy, and they looked more like a 2 or 3 on a scale of 10. So I think the takedown, and he's a jiu-jitsu guy, so his bread is buttered when he is able to get to the fight to the ground, but he was not ever able to get there. And Gene Silva went from landing big shots on the feet to an absolutely disgusting ninja choke. He jumped right on that. The squeeze on that looked crazy. Bryce tried to roll with it, which is the that's the Hail Mary. Like, the ninja choke's a very hard one to get out of because you can't really attack the grip at all. Because you can just hide your hand with your chin. Bryce Mitchell rolls. If the choke doesn't break when you roll, you're getting choked out. And he got choked out and went to sleep. So amazing choke from Gene Silva, and was a pretty good cherry on top of a pretty dominant performance, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was, well, first I'll say that's always the funny thing is when people are so good at jujitsu and stuff. Like you said, his takedowns are 5. And it's like it's tough for them to utilize their best weapon because they can't get people down, whether that be like someone like Brian Ortega has struggled with being a good enough wrestler to get people where he wants them. Or I want to say even, I know Jack Hermanson has a good ground game. I want to say he's struggled with landing takedowns maybe specifically in the past too. You just got to get it there, and he wasn't able to. And the other thing that did surprise me the much is the same thing. I thought he looked frustrated. I thought he looked maybe a little hesitant. I thought he Mitchell just kind of looked at a loss on the feet. He felt, or like you said, that was the word. He looked extremely uncomfortable about almost the whole fight. A little bit after through that first round. And I don't know if that's somewhere you want to be, especially if you're not going to land those takedowns. Silva's takedown defense did look good, but you don't want to look uncomfortable, standing in front of Silva and stuff. So I thought it was. I mean, I was rooting for Silva. I think a lot of people were. Part of the back of my mind, I was like, oh, does Mitchell just get him down and then kind of blanket him? A little bit of ground and pound here. Maybe a choke opens up, but Silva looked really good. I know it was at the knockouts that he's been doing a little bit, but I thought it was a really good, clean performance, like you said. And I will say, I think Mitchell tapped before he went out.
He tapped, and then he still went to sleep, but he definitely tapped.
Because I was gonna say, I mean, for someone that talks like he talks, I was like, you got to go to sleep. But then I saw the tap, but at least he still went to sleep. He took a little nap, at least a little bit.
Yeah. But I feel like he's probably done jiu-jitsu long enough. He knows the point when to tap. So the point in between tap and fall asleep was like simultaneous. So he's like, I know I'm going to go to sleep, so I'm going to tap. And then by the time you finish tapping, you're asleep. So I feel like he's probably done jiu-jitsu long enough to know that breaking point. And then because he went to sleep because he was laying there, and then Gene Silva started barking at him. So he definitely tapped, but he also went to sleep. So
that was the other thing too. I don't remember. I don't think we saw a Bible this one, so that prop didn't hit. I know that was an insane thing that people were betting on, but then I will say the whole Gene Silva barking, like hands behind him on the octagon, legs against the fence, insanity. But hey, I mean, you keep winning, you got to be entertaining somehow. I think he's a genuinely good enough fighter and has pretty decent mic skills, but he's doing even more to try to be out there and be wild.
Yeah, and he did that on the regional scene years ago, and people started finding that clip on Twitter and posting it on Twitter, being like, "Look at the crazy shit Gene Silva did 3 years ago, and nobody knew who he was." And he was doing the hang on to the cage and bark, and I think that's why he brought it back because so many people were like, "This is awesome. He should do this again."
I didn't know that. I respect that more. I thought that was maybe a confidence thing. He's getting, more clout, more fans, and he's obviously doing well. So he's like, I'm gonna just do some crazy. If he's doing that however many years ago, I respect that even more then.
Yeah. He did that when nobody knew who Gene Silva was, which is absolutely wild. For Gene Silva, he's starting to talk title. And listen, man, you have done great things in the UFC. Great things. He's, undefeated in the UFC. Every win has come via finish, knockouts, submissions, knocked out two dudes who had never been knocked out before, in Drew Dober and Charles Jourdain. Dober has since been knocked out a couple times, but I always give more credit to the first guy that got it done. So he's looked outstanding, and he's won fights that I thought he was going to lose, and going up to 55 and beating Dober is really impressive in my opinion for a featherweight. But the title talks is just we got to win. We got to win some more.
You're so likable. You're doing everything perfect. Don't give me a reason not to like you. Why we already calling title shot?
Yeah. And with that being said, I don't really know where I want to see him move up to in the rankings because I can see a Lerone Murphy fight, and I see why that makes sense. I think an Arnold Allen fight makes sense. Brian Ortega makes sense. The Yair fight, if they opt to go against the Lopes and Yair, I think Yair would be a fun fight. I think there's a lot of fun fights for him. Aljamain Sterling, not a bad fight. It's for him, he hasn't fought. The only ranked guy he's fought is Bryce Mitchell. So I'm kind of on board with whatever. He's earned a fight above him, and I could kind of care less. I don't know why I care less, but I really think they all make sense.
Yeah, the Lerone Murphy was the first one that came to my head, although I don't know. I hate kind of putting the two most exciting prospect, or not maybe most exciting, but the prospects that are doing the best right now against each other so early. But also, like you said, we don't have to. I mean, I get Paddy's living off that right now, jumping 5 spots every time he accepts a new fight. So, but that was his first ranked fight win. So we don't need to start looking at 3 and 4 Give or take, we did say they need to fix these rankings because that would make it easier. But I wouldn't be mad at a Sterling and an Allen, just anyone around him. Ortega, like you said, it doesn't have to be the jump 4 spots. Even if he fights one other person, that's one spot ahead of him. That's still getting another ranked fight under your belt, and it's letting other things play out as well.
Yeah. Like, I think it would make sense if they did like Lerone Murphy versus maybe they do Lerone Murphy versus Arnold Allen, and then you do a Gene Silva versus Brian Ortega, and then we pair up the winners and call the two winners a title eliminator. Like, it would
Hmm.
be a pretty respectable road for all those guys. Assuming a guy like Mosvar, you're kind of assuming the guys at the
Would
top
get the shot.
figure it out, yeah, and other things at the top move. But I feel like that would be a respectable route to where, so hypothetically speaking, a road to the title would be like Ortega and then Lerone Murphy or Arnold Allen. You're kind of appeasing a couple different of your prospects and you're not burning guys too soon. So that's probably the route I would approach it. But at the same time, my favorite thing about the featherweight division is that you can kind of randomly match up guys who aren't booked against each other, and it's like fun. Just like there's not too many fights in here where I would hate. So I would ultimately be content with a lot of different ways they could slice this up.
I'd agree.
All right. Last fight on the main card, Dominick Reyes versus Nikita Krylov. Dominick Reyes goes out there, lands a nice counter, puts Krylov out cold. Could have been a walk-off KO if he opted to walk off. Instead, he landed some ground and pound. So still impressive KO, but it could have been a walk-off. I think this was a fight that I was pumped about because I didn't think there was a way this was going to be a boring one. I felt like we were lining somebody up for a body here, and it ended up being Dominick Reyes creating the body. And, every time Dominick Reyes wins a fight, I'm impressed purely based off when he was at his lowest and seeing him climb back up these rankings. I think it's really, really impressive. And to get wins like that against anybody, it takes a lot of guts because he had his fair share of knockouts, but when the time comes and you're getting blitzed by, shots that could knock you out, he still had the guts to sit in there and throw that counter straight down the pipe and land the knockout. So to me, that says a lot about where his confidence is at. And that is the most impressive thing about the whole knockout, in my opinion. Because he has power, but the confidence to sit down and throw that shot is what I respected the most.
Yeah, that's what I was excited. I did the whole little career recap on the preview and stuff of where he was going. So I was rooting for him. I ended up switching to. I should have stuck with my gut. I was getting worried though, but I thought, yeah, he looked good. That was about the hope of what would happen if he got in there, and we talked about it last week too. But it was I think he was 13-0 before he got that Jones fight. He was KOing people the same way on the come up too, give or take. One of them was like a 40-year-old Weidman. I don't know how old Weidman quite was, but yeah, I think it was the confidence, and then you suffer some horrible KO losses, but he took his time off. He got his mind right, and I thought we're kind of seeing, and that was the other thing. I know Krylov's had that longer layoff. Reyes at least has been putting in the work, as in taking fights, and he's getting wins. Maybe they're not against the best opponents, but when you're trying to get yourself back on track, being in the octagon and getting wins is definitely helping. And I think I thought he said it perfectly too. He said, "I'm not only back, but I'm better and everything." And I thought that was kind of the whole thing for where his career's at too. It was like he was at rock bottom a little bit, and he's still making the climb up. And with that performance, it gives you a little bit more confidence and excitement for his next fight. Like, I think people are maybe a little less like, okay, is he just gonna get knocked out, or like waiting till he gets knocked out again? It's more of okay, well, maybe he's back. We'll see how good he is again. Like, can we really maybe talk about a title shot? Can he really climb all the way back up there? Which I think would be another amazing story too, if that were to fully happen that way.
Yep. And for him, he's kind of gotten to the point where 3 in a row, like Krylov was a highly ranked guy. Reyes is up to number 8. Like, from here, there's no, like, the fights aren't easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for him, the names I'm looking at, Alexander Rakic, I think makes a level of sense. I think Jan Blachowicz makes a level of
I saw.
sense. and I think the loser of Jamal Hale and Cleo Roundtree. I think the winner of that fight should go up, but the loser I think would make sense for Dominick Reyes. So those are kind of the three names that are sitting there to me, and I think a win over any one of those guys probably gets you a number one contender fight. So, and if you beat any of those guys, you deserve a number one contender fight. So
Yeah, because he definitely he also just crossed that line to see. It's like, okay, we're glad to see that you got your swagger back a little bit. You could still be like you're still a ranked fighter for sure, but now we're past kind of those gatekeepers, those old guys a little bit of like lower in the weight class necessarily. And now, yeah, your next fight's gonna be you're gonna run into someone right now, so it's kind of put up or shut up this next fight too, and we'll see if he can deliver again. But it's not gonna be easy. I did see the Jan Blachowicz one for people for the rematch because Jan got him. I think was that belt up for grabs in that fight? Or did John still have it and that was just booked?
That's a great question. I think the belt was up for grabs.
And that's how Jan became champion, right? Yeah, so true, he technically did get 2 cracks at it too. Yeah, with that though, and he just went 0 for 2 on him. But I did see, and Blachowicz, I think we talked about in the Olberg fight, was surprisingly looked pretty good. I was expecting a little bit worse version, so I wouldn't be mad at it.
Yep. And I do think that's another one where, like, if he goes out there and beats Jan, like, from a story perspective, getting that win back, because losing the John fight's often what is talked about with that, and I completely get it, but Blachowicz is where the wheels started to come off for him. And I think getting that one back would be really symbolic of turning things around. So I think that would be very impressive. And yes, the belt was up for grabs. So when John vacated the light heavyweight title, Jan and Reyes fought for that. So that was the title fight. But yeah, I think that would be a fun one. And then let's close out UFC 314 with some final thoughts. The prelims were solid. Nothing crazy. The prelims did kind of we talked about this last week, but when you lose Prates and Jeff Neal, and then you bump Reyes and Krylov up to the main card, it's a main card worthy fight, but when it was on the prelims, you're like, oh my God, these prelims are stacked. Now you're kind of got the prelims were more like a normal set of prelims.
Yeah. I saw I did watch that Danny Ige fight. I know a little bit questions with the stoppage right there, maybe a little early, but congrats to Ige. I mean, he is who he is. I mean, we've seen that continually that he's a great fighter, a great ranked fighter. Doesn't matter. He's going to be a tough night. Not that he has the most complicated style or anything, but he's just always game. And people, that was Woodson's shot again to finally maybe break into the rankings and then just slips up and loses again. So great performance by Ige. I was watching the Erosa Elkins fight. The damage got finished, or I mean, I don't even. Do they have his age up here? I know that's an old man fighting.
Yeah.
But we live up to his name because when he was younger, he could take the damage and still prevail. I think he's too old now to have that happen. But still, Erosa looked good. He did what he needed to do.
I think the damage has too much damage on his brain to keep competing in the UFC.
Yeah, that's crazy to get that nickname so young and fighting for like 15 years, and that's like still your fight style. It's just a little scary. And then the one I saw, Mikhail, Olejniczak or
Olejniczak.
Olejniczak. Okay, Olejniczak. I didn't know he's people kept saying a Polish fighting nerd. He's the first Polish fighting nerd.
Yes, he moved down to Brazil and started training with the fighting nerds.
Okay.
When he put on those silly little glasses, it didn't quite hit the same as when the Brazilians do it. But
when
he got to win.
I missed that fight, but I saw that he had looked good, and I saw the finish, at least the clip of it. And then the one thing I was going to ask you, I'm surprised Chase Hooper did not get to see that fight. I saw he made the Gooner comments and everything
Yeah,
in the
that was
post-fight.
wild. That really was a shock to me. We were kind of sitting there watching, and everyone I was watching with was like, "Whoa, what the hell did he just say?"
He said he thought he was gonna get a pop in the stadium, and no one really laughed. And then in the post-fight, or like after, he's like, "Yeah, I thought it was funny though, so I said it." And I was like, "I respect that." And then before you pick up some of these other ones, I did hear. It was right when I was leaving, so I didn't get to watch it. But I heard the Trayshawn Gore Tulio fight was one of the fight of the nights. Pretty entertaining. Not as back and forth. I heard Tulio was really winning it, but I think Gore stumbled him one time or hit him pretty good one time. But I was curious.
Yeah, that Tulio and Gore fight was absolutely ridiculous. Probably should have been the fight of the night, but I get why we give it to an entertaining championship bout. Like, I'm not really mad at it. But that fight was ridiculous. Tulio threw like the early things that was said by the commentary was, so Gore was walking forward, and Tulio's response to being pressured was to punch him and kick him. And Trayshawn Gore never stopped pressuring him. So Marco Tulio just threw punches and kicks for, let's see, fight ended 3 minutes into the second round. So for 8 minutes, he was throwing punches and kicks, and he lands hard as shit. I don't know how Gore ate as many shots as he did. Like, he landed some of his own, but like, it was ridiculous. I will say Marco Tulio has the worst spinning back kick for a guy that just loves to spam it.
Really?
Never got close to landing it, but so stop throwing that. But he's not bad. Some of these other fights, Sumo Darji and Mitch Raposo. I used to like Mitch Raposo, but every time Mitch Raposo fights, I just get pissed because of how inactive he is. And like, it's not even that he's not talented, but like, please fucking do something. It's a fight. Like, you have to fight at some point. We're just running in too many fights where there's no fighting with him, and I've kind of had enough of it. So, no more Mitch Raposo for me, preferably. Olajaychuk looked good, like you said. Elkins probably about half dead. Well, that's a grim way to put it. Elkins, stop fighting, please. Stop fighting. Danny and this one, a lot of people were very pissed about the stoppage, but he rocks him on the feet. He's following up, hits him a few more times. And Sean Woodson's on a single leg, and he eats like 10, 15 shots on the single leg. Like, it's a tough one because we have one of two things happen every single week. It feels like guys are on a single leg, and they take too many shots, and then they go to sleep holding on to a single leg. That's what happened to Drew Dober in his against Manuel Torres, I believe it was. He's holding on to a single leg, so it looks like he's trying to wrestle, and then he eats too many shots, and then it's a bad stoppage.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this fight, Sean Woodson's holding on to a single leg, and then when he starts to work up with it, after he eats like 15 shots, it just so happens to be the same exact time the ref stops the fight. It's like, I understand people saying it's a bad stoppage, but if we've seen this so many times. This goes back to Colby versus Usman. Colby's argument was that he was holding on to a single leg when they stopped it in the Usman fight in the 5th round. Like, if you are hurt and you have a single leg, you have to do something with it. You can't just sit there with it, or they will stop the fight. We've seen it so many times that I'm a little bit less upset when it gets stopped and we want to call it a late stoppage, because I have seen that position get stopped a million times. And as a former wrestler, it drives me nuts. Like, the guy's trying to work on a single, but then other times, like Drew Dober, he eats way too many shots because it looks like he's trying to wrestle, but he's actually out cold. So
yeah,
you just that's a position. It's a hard position to judge, and that's kind of the risk you play. That's why you can't just sit there with the leg. You have to do something with it. Period.
Because I thought, the Dober one, he didn't realize he got knocked out. He didn't realize he was knocked out. That's why I know people are like, oh, why is he complaining? It's like, no, he wasn't complaining. He didn't know he got knocked out. And then I just thought that going for the single leg was bad in that situation. And then I think you can't. I mean, he got like 10 shots clean on him. You can't on that 10th one then realize like, oh, I got to get up. No, like maybe if he gets 5 or 4, like you got to know the ref's watching you get hit 10 times repeatedly. And just having that single leg isn't necessarily intelligent defending when when both hands are wrapped up on the leg and now your head's just getting teed off on. So I think
Yeah.
it was just unfortunate timing. Like when he finally went to pop up is when the ref's like, oh, I've seen enough.
Yeah. It's not an easy position to ref, especially for stoppages. It's a lot easier when the guy's on one hip against the fence and you're trying to figure out if he's eating too many shots or not. Like sometimes that's intelligent defense working on the single. Sometimes a guy's out cold, still holding on to a single leg, but he's out cold and you got to stop the fight. So it's never going to be an easy one. But at some point, like we've both alluded to, at some point, you have to do something with it. You have to be moving. If you're not
Mm-hmm.
moving, that's when you just have to be constantly moving. And it's not easy because you're concussed at a minimum. Like it's not an easy thing to do. I don't want to make it seem like it's easy, but like I completely understand how we got to the stoppage. So, last one I'll throw
I
out
was gonna say
there.
the last fight, yeah.
Yeah. Rena Jandiroba looked pretty good against Yan Xiaonan. Thought it was a pretty good matchup for her. She didn't get knocked out on the feet, and Yan Xiaonan cannot grapple to
Yeah,
save
it's
her
gonna
life,
say
really.
it's killing
Ex-
her.
yeah, especially her first level of takedown defense gets better every single fight. She gets better at denying the takedowns, but somehow in every fight, she gets on the ground, she gets put on her back, and she is atrocious with the get ups. The get ups are really brutal. Um, she should have been submitted twice in that fight. I will never understand why girls that do arm bars jump arm bar with 15 seconds left and almost get it when it takes you like 20 seconds to get it. There's twice in that fight where it's like, all right, if you had 5 more seconds, you probably finish it, or 10 more seconds, you probably finish that arm bar. And then you almost get it once, and then for the second time, you then jump it again with 15 seconds left, and then you almost get it again. I don't know how that keeps happening. You have to jump it sooner. It's also the Mackenzie Dern disease. Dern finally got one against Hebos, which is jumping armbar with 15 seconds left on the clock, but like you have to jump it sooner. The amount of times I've seen these BJJ girls jump armbar after controlling a whole entire round and then not getting it because they did it too late it's outrageous. Just jump it 15 seconds earlier. You've dominated. You've got 4 minutes of top control time. You're gonna win the round. Jump the armbar. Like you work for it for 4 minutes. I don't give a shit, but jump
Yeah.
for it when it's time to jump for it. You give yourself enough time to finish it. So that is a mini rant from me that like is just outrageous that I have to see getting to the locked armbar and then fighting to break control. And the last step of the armbar, you hear the bell go off. It's like, oh, come on. It's
I
ridiculous.
I do think too. I mean, her wrestling has looks like it's been getting better too. But and you would think, I mean, it's Team Alpha Male too. Some should ideally be some better wrestling in there, but it's tough. Yeah, it's she's 35 too, which is tough. But I would say it's the wrestling's killing her every fight because I do think she is one of the more entertaining women's fighters too, all around. But she's getting better, but not better enough for where she needs to be with these fights she keeps getting matched up in. And I think she's run out of time a little bit. But I mean, we'll see who they give her in the next one.
Yeah, and
But
that
Jada Roba looked good too, though, like you said.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't realize she was 35. That's kind of concerning. But when she's in there with like Andrade and she gets the counter knockout, like that's peak of what she's like is nice about her. But yeah, there's just too many fights. And there's so many grapplers in this weight class. It's never gonna be an easy thing for her. Jandiroba, I assume, is gonna be tough to fight here.
I was thinking the same.
Especially when you've got, we're talking getting close to the double champ fight eventually for Whaley, but they've got that, you know, 125 title booked up right now. So do a Janji Robas and see where we sit at 25. And I think that's probably the next steps there for those two weight classes. All right. Thank you for everyone tuning in with us, listening to us talk fights. UFC 314 was a good one. There is no card this week. It's an off week. Next week is UFC Kansas City. We will be back next week. Maybe we'll have some news by next week. Dana was talking about how we were going to have news on Tuesday. It's Thursday, and we have no news. At least in terms of fight bookings. The next pay-per-view to be booked is going to be International Fight Week. They're booked out everything prior to that. So I assume the next announcement is going to be a big one. There's a couple fights that could be, but I feel like it's going to be a big one in some way, shape, or form. So the next piece of news we get should be a big one, and we'll be here to talk about it. Last thing, go to vendettasportsmedia.com. Read the website. It's not just UFC. This week will actually be lighter for the UFC since there is no event. But there is a ton of NFL draft stuff up there as the NFL draft gets closer. So that's the and NBA playoffs as well. So those are the two hot spots right now on the website. So go check out vendettasportsmedia.com and like and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. We will see you next week. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye.